All right, ready to dive in? Today, we're looking at machine-readable legislation.
Ooh, interesting.
It is right. It's kind of wild. Like, you know how legal stuff can feel impossible to understand?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, imagine if computers could just, get it
Yeah,
and actually help us figure out the law.
that would be amazing.
Right, so we're talking about turning all those, dense legal texts
Right.
into something computers can actually work with,
Mm-hmm.
analyze, maybe even reason with.
Wow.
And you sent over some super cool sources on this.
I did.
There's that academic paper that goes deep into the history and
Yeah.
all the challenges of this whole machine-readable thing.
A fascinating field.
It is. And then there's this YouTube transcript
Oh, yeah.
from a master class with some Australian legal tech experts.
They're doing some really innovative work.
Yeah, and they actually built a system that does this.
Yeah.
And then another paper, this one focused on a platform called Datalex AI.
Okay, I'm familiar with that one.
So it's like, are we really at a point where we can ask our computers
It really makes you think.
if our business idea is legal and get a real answer?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. So let's find out.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the pursuit of making laws more precise,
Yeah,
that's not a new thing, right?
not at all.
Legal scholars, lawyers, they've been arguing about the ambiguity of language forever.
Oh, for centuries.
Right. I've definitely had my share of struggles trying to decipher legal documents.
That's like a whole other language sometimes.
It really is. And you just wonder, why is it so hard to make laws
Right.
clear and concise?
Exactly.
Well, why all the jargon?
Well, there's this fascinating history there, Back in the 1960s,
Okay.
there was this legal scholar, David Mellenkopf, and he was already criticizing this idea of precision
Hmm.
in legal language. He was like, look, lawyers want exact meanings,
Right.
but the tools they're using, the vocabulary, it just doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
And then there's Peter Tiersma. He argued that even trying to simplify legal language with plain English
Yeah.
can actually backfire.
Oh, really? How so?
He thought that all that jargon creates this feeling of exclusivity.
Like you need a secret decoder ring or something.
Exactly. Like you need a special membership card to understand the law.
It's like a secret society.
It kind of is.
But how did we go from trying to make legal language simpler for humans
Yeah.
to trying to make it understandable for computers?
That's where it gets really interesting. Early attempts to make laws machine readable
Oh,
actually use something called symbolic logic.
symbolic logic.
Yeah, it's almost like creating a math formula for the law.
A math formula for law. That sounds complicated.
It was. But back in the 1950s, Layman E. Allen,
Oh, okay.
he was already a pioneer of this approach,
Wow.
and he tried to use these symbols to get rid of any ambiguity in legal statements.
Huh.
And his work laid the groundwork for what we call rules as code now.
Rules as hold on. Are we talking robot lawyers here?
Not quite.
Well, what happens to human judgment interpretation?
Right.
Laws aren't always black and white.
That's such a crucial point,
Hmm.
and it really gets to the core of this whole endeavor.
Mhm.
It's really fascinating how technology has evolved
Right.
and led to these new approaches
Okay.
that go way beyond just fitting laws into rigid logic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's less about replacing humans
Okay.
and more about giving them these powerful tools.
So we're not talking about replacing lawyers with robots, right?
Yes, no, not at all.
We're talking about giving everyone better tools to understand this complex world of law.
Exactly.
Okay, phew. I was getting a little nervous there for a second.
I understand.
But I'm also incredibly curious about how these new approaches actually work.
Well, let's get into that.
Yeah.
It's not about replacing lawyers at all. It's really about making the law more accessible and understandable for everyone.
Right, right.
And, those newer approaches you mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big jumps was using something called XML. Yeah, it's basically a way to tag parts of legal documents
Okay.
so computers can actually understand their structure.
So it's like giving the computer a roadmap to navigate the law.
Exactly, yeah. Like instead of teaching the computer to understand every word,
Right.
we show it how the information is organized.
Okay. That makes sense.
And a great example of this is Creative Commons licenses.
Oh, yeah.
They're written in plain English, which is great for us,
Right.
but they also have this underlying XML structure
Mm.
that makes them machine readable.
So a computer could look at a Creative Commons license and instantly know what's allowed and what's not allowed,
Exactly.
even if it doesn't fully grasp copyright law.
Right, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's super useful for anyone working with digital content.
Absolutely. And it gets even cooler.
Oh,
There's this international standard called computer-readable.
Komanotoso.
Yeah, it's designed specifically for marking up legal texts.
Okay.
So it's like, imagine a universal language for legal documents.
Whoa, a universal language for law. That sounds like something out of Star Trek.
It kind of is. It could totally change how we understand laws across different countries
Wow.
and different legal systems.
So you mentioned earlier that a Komanotoso uses something called a legal ontology.
Yes.
Can you break that down for me? What does that even mean?
It's not as complicated as it sounds, really.
Okay.
A legal ontology is basically just a shared vocabulary for legal concepts.
Okay.
It's like we're creating a dictionary that both humans and computers can understand.
So it's like a Rosetta Stone for law.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So, like, theoretically, a computer in, say, the U.S. could understand a law passed in France.
Exactly, just by looking at its Akoma-Natoso markup.
That's incredible.
It really is groundbreaking.
But can these systems really understand, like, all the nuances of legal language?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Law is so full of gray areas and interpretations, it's not always black and white.
You're right. It's a huge challenge, but the progress is amazing. You know, one of your sources actually shows how this is being used in the real world.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of AustLII's Datalex system?
Datalex, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
It's the one from those Australian legal tech experts, right?
That's the one.
The YouTube video, yeah.
Yes. They developed this system that uses a language called yscript
Okay.
to actually turn laws into computer programs.
Turn laws into computer programs, so like actual code.
Actual code, yeah.
Yeah.
And they talk about this really interesting use case with the Foreign Relations Act,
Okay.
where their system can help universities
Yeah.
figure out if their agreements with, foreign entities are legal.
So it's like an automated compliance checker.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What's the user experience like?
It's actually very user-friendly. It uses this questionnaire format.
Okay.
You input information about your specific situation,
Right.
and the system checks it against the relevant legislation.
So it's not just a yes or no answer.
No, it gives you a detailed explanation of the reasoning,
Okay.
and even links to other legal resources.
So it's like having a little legal research assistant built in.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is.
But what about those situations where the law itself isn't so clear-cut?
Right.
You know, those gray areas where there could be different interpretations. Can these systems handle that?
That's a great question. And you're talking about what legal scholars call open texture.
Open texture.
Yeah. It's the idea that legal terms can be, ambiguous,
Right.
open to multiple interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
And the Datalex system actually addresses this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when the law isn't black and white,
Okay.
it provides links to relevant case law and explanations.
Oh, interesting.
So users can understand the different perspectives.
So it's not just about automating the easy cases, but also providing guidance in those complex situations.
Exactly.
That's really smart.
It is. But you're right, this kind of approach probably works best for rules that have a clear logical structure.
Right.
Like, calculations or eligibility criteria,
Yeah.
things like that.
What about areas of law that are less straightforward?
Yeah, the sources actually mentioned a few other examples.
Okay.
Like regulations for community gaming and the Modern Slavery Act,
Okay.
where the rule's more structured.
Right. So easier to translate into that machine-readable format.
Right.
This brings up another question, though.
Yeah.
What happens when the code, that perfectly logical machine-readable code,
Yeah.
disagrees with a human's interpretation of the law?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Who gets the final say?
Well, that's a huge debate right now. It's the concept of authoritative code.
Authoritative code. Okay.
The question is, should the code itself be legally binding or just a tool to help us understand the law?
It's a tough one.
It is. It reminds me of the challenges with bilingual legislation in Canada.
Okay.
Translating laws into two languages can create discrepancies.
Right, because the two versions might not have the exact same meaning.
Exactly.
So, are we going to have code lawyers someday?
Code lawyers, huh?
Who specialize in translating between, human law and computer law?
That's a really interesting thought. And, there's so much work being done to create systems that are more robust and transparent. And to address these potential challenges,
Yeah.
there are some really ambitious projects underway.
Like what?
Well, have you heard of the Regulatory Genome Project?
Regulatory Genome Project? No.
It's this huge effort to organize regulatory information from all over the world.
Wow.
and make it machine readable.
So it's like a giant library of regulations, but instead of books, it's all code.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It's incredible, and it really ties back to the importance of those legal ontologies,
Right, right.
shared vocabulary.
So we need that if we want a truly global legal system.
Exactly, one that computers can understand.
This is all so fascinating, but to be honest, a part of me is still a little nervous.
I get it.
Is AI going to replace lawyers entirely?
I don't think so.
Are we going to be arguing our cases in front of robot judges?
I think that's a bit far off,
Okay.
but it's a valid concern.
It is, but it also makes you think about, like, what does this mean for the future of law?
It really does make you think, doesn't it? Like,
Mm.
as AI gets more sophisticated, how will it change how we even think about the law itself?
Yeah, will it, like, fundamentally change the legal system as we know it?
Well, in some ways, we're already seeing it happen, right?
Yeah, really?
Think about legal databases like Westlaw and LexisNexis. They've been using AI for years
Yeah.
to help lawyers research cases and find those precedents.
Right, to find similar cases.
Exactly. But as AI and machine learning get even more advanced,
Mm.
they could analyze tons of legal data
Okay.
and maybe even predict outcomes.
Whoa, predict outcomes, like who's going to win a case.
Potentially, yeah.
Eh.
And that's something humans can't really do.
That's kind of amazing and a little scary, to be honest.
I understand.
Like, what about bias?
Right.
If these systems are learning from existing legal data, which we know can be biased,
Yeah.
how do we make sure they're not just making things worse?
That is a really important point. The ethical implications are huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's something everyone's thinking about, researchers, legal experts.
Yeah,
It's not just about the tech itself.
right.
It's about how we design it, how we use it, and how we govern it.
So it's about the human element, too.
Exactly. We need to make sure AI is used responsibly and ethically.
So we need to think about our values and how we build those into the code.
Absolutely. It's going to require a totally new way of thinking about law and technology.
Yeah, this is definitely more complex than I initially thought.
It is, and it needs everyone to work together.
Okay.
Lawyers, computer scientists, ethicists, policymakers.
It's like a whole new world.
It really is.
Yeah.
We need to have these discussions now to ensure that this technology helps create a fairer, more just legal system.
And not one that makes existing problems worse.
Exactly.
This is a lot to think about, but I have to say, it's also pretty exciting.
I agree.
We're talking about changing how we understand and interact with the law. Like, imagine everyone having access to clear legal info,
Yeah,
no matter who they are or what their background is.
that's the dream, right? Democratizing access to the law.
It is, and it seems like technology might actually be able to make that happen.
I think it can.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for sure.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's clear we're still in the early stages.
Oh, yeah. We're just getting started.
But I'm optimistic about the future of, what was it called?
Machine-readable legislation.
Machine-readable legislation.
I like that optimism.
Yeah, and making law more accessible to everyone.
It's a worthy goal.
It is, and it's important to remember technology is just a tool.
Right.
It's up to us to use it wisely.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. It's been a great discussion.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about machine-readable legislation.
Keep learning.
Exactly. Check out the resources we mentioned if you want to dive even deeper.
There's so much to explore.
There is. Until next time, stay curious.